Hey there. Tonight, we're taking a quiet walk through a world of old Greek mythological stories, where gods sometimes argue over the little things, heroes face big challenges in flowing robes, and even monsters just want some peace and quiet. You're not here to fight or win anything. You're just here to stroll through ancient Greece at sunset, your sandals brushing the soft ground, as gentle winds carry whispers of old myths through the warm, drowsy air. You find yourself in the middle of a grove, the sun just dipping below the horizon, casting a honey-gold glow over knotted tree trunks and scattered amphorae. Cicadas chirp lazily in the distance. The wind smells like thyme and old stone. There's no one in sight. Yet. But you sense that you're not entirely alone. As you make your way through the grove, soft soil underfoot, you catch glimpses, shadows darting behind marble columns half swallowed by ivy. One moment, there's a flicker of laughter. The next, a low rumble of something large breathing in the brush. This is no ordinary forest. This is the liminal edge between the mortal world and the one where stories breathe. You've arrived in myth, and nobody sent a welcome basket. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where in the world we're all falling asleep together. Now, dim the lights, maybe fluff your pillow and get comfortable in your bed. Adjust the volume and brightness of your device as per your comfort. Soften your breath, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. As the grove deepens, you notice that the trees grow older the farther you walk. Their bark is wrinkled like parchment, and their roots claw the earth with ancient confidence. You pass a stone well with a faint whisper echoing up from its darkness. Don't lean in too close. Some say that's where Echo herself now lives, endlessly repeating confessions nobody asked for. Then, just past a clearing, you spot the ruins of a crumbled shrine. The inscription is barely legible, but you can make out a single name, Nyx, the primordial goddess of night. She's not technically part of the 12 Olympians, they found her a little too intense, but even Zeus, the thunder-throwing drama king, was said to fear her. Historians still argue whether Nyx represents the literal darkness before time, or if she's just a very goth metaphor with good branding. A cool breeze rustles the olive branches overhead. You glance up, and for a moment, you swear the stars rearrange themselves into shapes. Not constellations, but stories. A lion, a lyre, a woman turning into a tree. They shimmer faintly, then dissolve like mist. Welcome to Greek myth, where logic took a long nap and never woke up. And here's a fun bit. Archaeologists once found tiny terracotta offerings shaped like ears buried near old shrines. At first, they assumed it was some kind of symbolic hearing gesture. Turns out, ancient Greeks just really hoped the gods were listening, especially when they were muttering complaints under their breath. You begin to descend a gentle path, carved with winding lines like waves. Every few feet, there's a pedestal with a statue. Most are missing noses. Ancient sculptors never seemed to glue those things on tight. But one statue still has a faint smirk. It's Hermes, the trickster god. He's always listening, and rumor has it he hides messages for travelers in forgotten trail signs and goat-shaped clouds. You pause at a mossy bench overlooking a sleepy valley. Below, a wide river winds through the land like a silver ribbon. That's the river Achelous, named after a shape-shifting river god who once got into a brawl with Heracles. The reason? A love triangle. Classic. In one version of the myth, Achelous turned into a bull, lost a horn in the fight, and that horn became the cornucopia. You know, the Thanksgiving basket thing? Yep, that's Greek myth for you. Chaos, drama, and dinnerware. You notice the bench is oddly warm, like someone sat here just moments ago, or something. But you're not scared. You're just very aware. Aware that in this world, stories lean in close and whisper in your ear when no one's looking. And then the sun slips completely beneath the horizon. The world doesn't go black. It turns a deep, velvety blue, the kind that makes you feel like you're walking through ink. Fireflies blink lazily near the path, casting soft glows on the ground like little bedtime candles. You take a slow breath. You're still here, still safe. And now, you're no longer just visiting the myths. You're inside them. Step by quiet step, you move forward, toward a flickering light in the distance and the sound of music just beginning to drift through the air. Next stop, a party you probably weren't invited to. But hey, that's never stopped Dionysus before. You follow the music, a winding tune of pipes and flutes, warm and lilting, like wine being poured in slow motion. The air is thicker now, humid with the scent of grapes, honey, and maybe just a little mischief. And there, past the trees, you find the source. A woodland clearing bathed in torchlight, where vines hang like streamers, and the earth thumps softly with the beat of drums. It's a symposium, but not the kind you suffered through in school. This is the realm of Dionysus, god of wine, madness, and mildly questionable decisions. He's the only Olympian who will let you in wearing dusty sandals and a drowsy expression. In fact, that's kind of his whole vibe. People lounge on embroidered cushions, sipping from goblets carved with dancing goats and weeping nymphs. You ease into a velvet seat beside a very drunk satyr who offers you a fig and immediately forgets he did. The music swells. Somewhere in the background, a leopard yawns. Yes, a real one. Dionysus always travels with at least one big cat. It's a brand thing. No one speaks above a whisper here. That's the rule. It's a place to listen, to dream, to dissolve into myth like honey in warm milk. Dionysus wasn't born like the others. His mother, Semele, was mortal, and tricked by Hera into asking Zeus to show her his true form, which, surprise, turned out to be lightning. She exploded instantly. Classic Greek tragedy. As you sip something floral and fizzy handed to you by a dryad, a woman leans in and whispers a story into your ear. Her voice sounds like cinnamon in thunderclouds. She tells you about the time Dionysus visited the mortal world disguised as a human. Pirates tried to kidnap him, because, you know, Greece had a pirate problem. They figured he was just a rich noble. But their ropes wouldn't hold, and wine flooded their ship. The mast turned into ivy. Dionysus transformed into a lion and roared so loud the sailors jumped overboard. He was a bit of a theater kid with boundary issues. You glance around. The revelers begin to slow. One by one, they sink into their couches, their breaths growing long and even. The satyr beside you snores like a foghorn in a bottle. At the far end of the clearing stands Dionysus himself, young, beardless, crowned with grapevines and starlight. His eyes meet yours, and he winks. Or maybe he blinks. Or maybe he's not even there. You realize you've started to feel a little floaty, like you're drifting somewhere between dream and history. Nearby, someone recites an ancient poem about the underworld. It's oddly soothing. The lines tumble out like leaves in a breeze. The underworld isn't scary here, just dimly lit, quiet, soft. Even Hades, Lord of the Dead, is mostly just tired and introverted. You hear a detail you'd never known before. Ancient Greeks buried their dead with coins to pay Charon, the ferryman across the river Styx. But not everyone could afford coins. So, some used tokens, or little bits of food, or simply whispered promises. Archaeologists have even found skeletons buried with fake mouths, open in permanent, silent negotiation. The music fades. The party wanes. Dionysus lifts his cup in your direction and mouths something. Maybe a farewell, maybe a joke. And then, as gently as it all began, the torches extinguish. The revelers melt into mist. The vines slide silently off the tables like serpents heading home. You're alone again. But you're not afraid. You're just ready for what's next. A small path curls off to the side. The dirt is soft and golden, glowing faintly beneath your feet. You follow it without question. The air changes again, lighter, drier, like the breath of an old scroll just unrolled. You emerge onto a narrow street paved with marble slabs. The buildings here are grand but worn, their columns cracked and overgrown. This is Athens, but not tourist Athens. This is sleepy, twilight Athens, when the philosophers have gone to bed and the torchbearers murmur softly as they pass. You stroll past quiet homes. A statue of Athena watches you from her perch above a well. Owls blink from rooftops. Somewhere nearby, a child recites Homer in their sleep. The words float on the wind like lullabies in hexameter. And then you spot a doorway, half open, with flickering lamplight inside. A voice murmurs gently from within. A lecture, perhaps. Not the loud kind. The cozy, droning kind. You step closer. Inside is an old man in a woolen cloak, gesturing vaguely toward a chalkboard. He doesn't see you. Historians still argue whether pre-Socratic philosophers were brilliant minds ahead of their time, or just guys who drank too much and got really into metaphors. The room smells like olives, ink, and warmed parchment. You find a cushion in the back and settle down. The professor continues, his voice rising and falling like waves. You don't understand all the words, but that's okay. Sometimes understanding is overrated. Sometimes being surrounded by stories is enough. The old man's lecture carries on like a tide lapping against ancient stone. You sink deeper into the cushion, and the room seems to hum around you, not with excitement, but with the low, rhythmic buzz of shared curiosity. The kind that doesn't need answers, just better questions. Outside, the soft wind nudges the door open a little wider, and in that hush, you hear it again. The sound of sandals on marble, echoing faintly. Someone's approaching. You ease back onto your feet, not startled, just curious. Back on the street, the torchlight has dimmed to a dusky glow, as if even the flames are growing sleepy. But the figure ahead of you seems wide awake. She wears a long cloak of midnight blue, her hair braided like laurels. In one hand, she carries a scroll. In the other, a spear. Not threatening, just balanced. Like she could teach you how to fight and read in the same breath. You realize who this is. Athena, goddess of wisdom, war, and apparently, nighttime strolls through metaphysical Athens. She nods at you, and without speaking, gestures for you to follow. As you walk together through the city's quiet veins, she tells you about her birth. And you might want to sit down for this one. Zeus, her father, had a splitting headache. Not your average, I need some olive oil and a nap sort of headache. More of a, somebody get a godly axe and split my skull open situation. So Hephaestus, the blacksmith god, obliged. Out popped Athena, fully grown, in armor, and possibly with a battle cry. No one agrees if it was majestic or mildly terrifying. You pause beside an olive tree planted in the middle of a courtyard. It's ancient, with gnarled bark and silver-green leaves that shimmer in the moonlight. Athena places her hand gently on the trunk. "This was my gift," she says softly. "The olive. Useful, nourishing, peaceful." You nod, as if you've always known that. She continues walking, and you trail her down narrower paths. Now you're entering the world behind the temples, the homes of artisans, poets, midwives, and scribes. A woman hums while grinding pigment for frescoes. A child, half asleep, clutches a doll shaped like a lion. A baker leaves dough to rise, her hands dusted in flour. Athena doesn't speak, but somehow you know what she's thinking. This quiet brilliance, this making of things, is the heart of civilization. Not war, not temples, just creation, one sleepy step at a time. Athena leads you past the Acropolis, now silent and cloaked in mist. You swear the statues watch you with softened eyes. Even the marble seems to rest. Suddenly, Athena stops. She points to a stone staircase that descends into the ground. "If you're ready," she says. "The next part of the story is a little darker, but it's safe. You'll see." You nod, because somehow, with your breath slow and even, and your limbs pleasantly heavy, you trust her. The stairs spiral downward, each step lit by a flickering torch lodged into the damp stone walls. The air is cooler here, earthy, still. You pass a carved plaque. "Welcome to the labyrinth." Athena stays behind, fading like a candle in fog. Ahead, you hear footsteps, but only one pair. Even the monsters seem to be on break tonight. The labyrinth, of course, is where the Minotaur lived, a half-man, half-bull creature locked in a maze built by Daedalus, the ancient Greek equivalent of a Silicon Valley inventor, brilliant, misunderstood, and a little too into trapdoors. Historians still argue whether the labyrinth was ever real or just a metaphor for the complex halls of the mind. Either way, it's surprisingly cozy tonight. The walls are covered in moss. There's a small fountain trickling in the corner. You feel more like you're in a fancy Greek spa than a monster's lair. Eventually, you reach a central chamber, and there, instead of a minotaur, is a quiet, elderly man feeding a goat. He gestures for you to sit beside him. You do. He smiles. "You made it," he says. "Most people never get this far before they wake up." He offers you a ball of thread. "This isn't to find your way out," he whispers. "It's to remember how you got in." You smile, and just like that, the labyrinth begins to dissolve around you. Not in a scary way, more like mist parting on a quiet morning. There's sand beneath your feet. The stars above are bright and close, like they've leaned in to hear the rest of the tale. And a ship is waiting on the shore. Its sails ripple gently in the wind. The deck is lit with lanterns that smell like oranges and old stories. A woman waves from the prow, her hair braided with seashells. You board the ship. She welcomes you. "We're headed for Troy," she says. "It'll take a while. Plenty of time to rest." You settle near the bow. The ocean murmurs. The hull creaks gently. Someone hums a lullaby in ancient Greek. The ship begins to glide. You lie back on the gently rocking ship, the stars winking down like they've been watching this voyage for millennia. The sails swell with a soft, whispering wind. The sea hums beneath you, not with menace, but with the slow rhythm of a world too old to hurry. A few feet away, your captain, yes, the woman with shell-braided hair, sits cross-legged beside a wooden chest, humming something low and haunting. She catches your glance and smiles. "You've heard of Troy, I assume," she says, voice as smooth as worn linen. "But not like this." She opens the chest, revealing scrolls, a pair of sandals with golden straps, and, oddly, a single feather. She pulls out a small carved horse, no taller than her palm. "It wasn't all Helen and swords," she says. "Some of it was, sure, but there's more." You settle in as she begins. You find yourself on a beach. The sun is high, and the air smells like roasted onions and bronze polish. You're with the Greeks now, camped just outside the mighty walls of Troy. It's year 7, or maybe 9 of the war. Honestly, the dates get fuzzy. The soldiers have started referring to seasons as another hot one, or cold but boring. You sit beside a young man sharpening his sword. He's got a long nose, a slight limp, and a surprisingly good singing voice. You ask for his name. "Odysseus," he says, grinning. "But don't worry, you'll remember me later." He tells you how this whole mess started. A golden apple. A goddess beauty contest. Some guy named Paris picked Aphrodite as the fairest, and she rewarded him with Helen. Yes, that Helen. The most beautiful woman in the world. Problem was, she was already married, and her husband, Menelaus, wasn't exactly chill about it. Historians still debate whether Helen truly went willingly to Troy, or whether the gods, or poets, pushed her into legend. Either way, you nod politely and take another bite of roasted fig from a nearby cookfire. Odysseus gestures behind him. "You'd think with all these heroes, we'd have wrapped this up in a week. But Achilles keeps sulking. and Agamemnon's more into speeches than strategies. And Achilles? Oh, you meet him too. Eventually. He's not what you expect. Sure, he's tall and shiny, his armor practically humming with ego. But up close, he looks tired. Not physically, just soul tired. Like someone who knows his story has already been written. He's speaking to his mother, Thetis, beside the sea. Her hair glows like pearl, and she touches his cheek with fingers that ripple like tide foam. "You know how this ends," she whispers. He nods. "But I still have to do it." That's the thing about prophecy in Greek myths. It's less about fate, more about inevitability. You know the path. You walk it anyway. Later, you find yourself watching the infamous wooden horse being constructed. It's less majestic than you'd think. There's a lot of arguing about the number of wheels and whether it needs a tail. One soldier suggests a trap door, another wants cup holders. Odysseus, as always, mediates. You notice a lanky young man slipping inside the horse with a handful of olives and a deck of painted cards. For the boredom, he shrugs. You wish him luck. He winks and disappears into the shadows. When the horse is wheeled to the gates of Troy, it's not triumph, it's tension. The Trojans argue for hours. "It's a trap," yells one priest, who promptly gets eaten by sea serpents. Unrelated? Maybe, but not a great look. Eventually, the horse is dragged in. And that night, you're there, watching the gates creak open from inside a moonlit alley. The Greeks spill in like shadows, and Troy begins to fall. But here's the thing you weren't told in school. It doesn't fall in screams. Not entirely. It crumbles in whispers, in lullabies abruptly ending, in statues toppling like forgotten dreams, in a mother clutching her child as dust settles around her. Even the victors look lost. You find Odysseus again at dawn, sitting alone amid the ruins. He's holding a small carved horse, identical to the one your captain showed you. He looks at you. "The war was never the story," he says. "What comes after? That's where the real journey begins." And just like that, the scene fades. The beach dissolves into mist, and you're back on the ship. Your captain has lit a small lantern. Its warm glow makes the wooden planks seem soft, almost like silk. She opens her palm. Inside, a tiny thread. "Take it," she says. "You'll need it for what's next." You wrap it gently around your finger, unsure what you're supposed to do with it, but somehow, knowing it matters. The wind shifts again. This time, it smells like honey, barley, and a hint of something smoky. "We're nearing the island of Circe," she says. You smile. You're not sleepy yet, but your eyelids feel heavier. The waves rock you. The stars blink slowly. You lean against the mast. It hums like a lullaby. You wake, or maybe you never fully slept, to the sound of soft chanting. Not the eerie kind, but something soothing, almost like a lullaby carried on the breeze. The ship glides toward an island wreathed in a thin fog, with cypress trees rising like sentinels and birds calling in loops that never quite resolve into melody. The captain stands at the helm, pointing toward the shore. "Welcome to Aea," she says with a stretch, like she's introducing a quirky Airbnb. "Home of Circe. Be polite, and definitely don't eat anything she offers." Your feet crunch onto the gravel shore. Moss squishes beneath your steps as you follow a winding path up toward a large stone villa, draped in vines and humming with bees, magic, both. Inside, the scent is overwhelming, in a good way. Honey cakes, roasted lamb, lavender oil, and some sort of enchanted goat cheese you can almost hear singing to itself. Everything glows faintly golden, as if dipped in sunlight and smugness. And then, there she is, Circe, the sorceress, the exile, the maybe goddess. She doesn't look like a villain, more like your coolest professor crossed with a forest nymph. Loose robes, bare feet, and hair that flows like a glass of red wine poured too generously. "You're not from Ithaca," she says, peering at you, "but you've got wanderlust in your aura." You try to respond, but she's already turned and is now lecturing a fox in Latin. The fox nods solemnly. Circe, as it turns out, is lonely. Not the tragic kind, more the "I've turned too many ex-boyfriends into pigs" kind. Literally, they're rooting in the courtyard garden. She invites you to tea, not just any tea, but a brew made from saffron, thyme, and moonlight, steeped in a shell-shaped pot. You sip. You float a little. Time slows. She tells you her story, not the version the bards sing, the real one. Born of Helios, the sun god. Raised in a palace of light, but overshadowed by more powerful siblings. Banished for dabbling in witchcraft, which mostly involved turning a really bad date into a lizard. Fair. Historians still argue whether Circe was a feminist icon or just really bad at communication. Either way, her spells worked, and people feared her for it. You ask her about Odysseus, and she groans theatrically. "Oh, that man," she says, pouring more tea. "Charming, clever, dramatic. Spent a year here, rearranging my furniture and asking deep questions about fate." She pauses. "But he was kind. He listened." Circe leans in, eyes glittering. "And he changed. He left, but he changed." You wonder aloud if that's the real magic, not transformation spells or potions, but getting someone to change themselves. She smiles, a little sadly. "It doesn't last," she whispers, "but it's lovely while it does." Outside, the pigs snort in harmony. One is attempting to dance. You realize they still have human memories, maybe even regrets. You wonder if that's the punishment or the mercy. Circe shows you her apothecary. Shelves of herbs, bones, glass jars filled with things that blink occasionally. She offers to teach you a simple enchantment, nothing dangerous, just a way to make your dreams more vivid. You accept. It involves whispering a name into a fig leaf and setting it afloat in milk. You choose the name Nostos, Greek for homecoming. She nods, approving. Everyone's searching for that, aren't they? By now, the sun has slipped down into the ocean, turning the sky a bruised purple. You and Circe sit on the villa's porch, watching fireflies blink in spirals. She tells you stories the poets forgot, about goddesses who grew tired of flattery, sailors who fell in love with sea monsters, and a city made entirely of mirrors that vanished at dawn. One of the pigs rests its head on your lap. You scratch behind its ears. It sighs. You ask if she'll ever leave this island. No, Circe says. I've grown into it, like ivy on stone. The captain returns, knocking politely on the doorframe. Circe rises, hugs you, warm, firm, no spells involved, and whispers, "Be careful with love. It's the oldest magic and the trickiest." Back on the ship, you notice the feather Circe tucked into your collar. It glows faintly blue. You don't know what it does. You're not even sure if it's real, but you hold it gently. You ask the captain what's next. She grins. Ever met a man who stole fire from the gods? You groan, stretch, and settle back into your blanket. The sea rocks the ship like a grandmother with nowhere else to be. And in the distance, just barely, you think you hear Circe's fox still lecturing someone in Latin. The sail creaks in the moonlight, and you drift beneath constellations that, according to Greek astronomers, were once gods and monsters now frozen in mid-drama. The stars shimmer like gossip you're just too tired to eavesdrop on. You're dozing when the ship bumps gently against something solid. Not a dock. A ledge? You blink awake to find yourself facing a towering cliff. Jagged, cold, oddly majestic. Mount Caucasus, the captain says, as if this explains everything. You rub your eyes. Like, the one with the eagle? Yep, she says. And the guy chained to the rock. Prometheus, eternal snack plate. You step onto the outcrop. There's no path, just rough stone and howling wind. But up you climb, boots scraping, hands aching, heart pounding with something close to awe. You round a bend, and there he is. Prometheus, tall, muscular in the tragic Greek statue way, face weathered, chained to the rock with loops of divine iron that shimmer faintly blue, just like the feather Circe gave you. And yes, there's the eagle, hovering in the shadows, eyes glinting with bureaucratic menace. It flaps off for a break as you approach. Prometheus turns his head. "Took you long enough," he says dryly. You blink. "Me?" He chuckles, the sound like cracking glaciers. "No, I mean anyone. People don't visit much. Pain's not a crowd pleaser." You sit beside him, not too close. Chained demigods need space. Prometheus tells his story in a voice like thunder under a blanket. How he created humans from clay. How he taught them fire. Not just literal flames, but knowledge, curiosity, ambition. "And for that," he says, rattling his chains, "Zeus gave me this all-inclusive torment package. Forever." Historians still argue whether Prometheus was a martyr, a rebel, or just a really arrogant babysitter with bad boundaries. You ask him if he regrets it. He looks at you for a long time. Would you rather live in ignorance, safe, warm, obedient, or take the fire and risk everything? You think of Circe, of Odysseus, of that glow in your collar. You don't answer. Not yet. Prometheus sighs, staring at the stars. "They say I'll be freed one day. Heracles is supposed to come by, bust me out." He squints. "You're not Heracles, are you?" You shake your head. "Definitely not." He chuckles again. "Didn't think so. Too clean." The eagle returns. Prometheus winces but doesn't scream. You look away. He mutters something about dramatic timing and Zeus having control issues. To distract him, and yourself, you ask what fire really is. He smiles through the pain. It's more than heat, he says. It's the ache to know, to shape the world. It's invention, poetry, music, lies, love, all of it. Fire is hunger made visible. Your breath catches. You understand something, not in words, but in your bones. Prometheus leans back. The worst part? He adds. They still don't know how to use it without burning themselves. Below you, the sea glows faintly. The ship waits. Prometheus nods toward it. You should go. The next story's less gory. You hesitate. Then, impulsively, you reach into your collar and place Circe's feather in his hand. It fuses to the iron, pulsing once. Prometheus's eyes widen, but he says nothing. You leave him with the eagle and the stars and the smallest flicker of change. As you descend, the wind softens. There's music now, somewhere between a harp and a heartbeat. You board the ship again, half dreaming. The captain looks at you. You okay? Yeah, you say. Just met the guy who gave us matches and consequences. She laughs. Prometheus always was a bit extra. You sail on, past cliffs and caves, until dawn begins to blush across the horizon. Somewhere behind you, a chain groans. The sun is lazily rising over the Aegean as your ship sails eastward again, soft orange light pooling over the water like a spilled potion. You lean on the railing, half listening to the creaking of the hull, trying to sort through everything you've seen so far. A talking owl, a potion-wielding sorceress, a vengeful sky dad, an eternally tormented titan. If this is a dream, it's the kind of dream that would make your therapist raise one eyebrow and start scribbling notes. The captain interrupts your musing. We're heading to Delos. Ever met twin gods? You blink. Like siblings? She grins. Apollo and Artemis, light and shadow, music and mayhem, the sun and the hunt. Delos emerges from the mist like it's being remembered instead of discovered. The island gleams with white marble ruins, half-sunk columns, and crooked olive trees. The air here smells of time and myth. You step off the boat and are immediately struck by how quiet it is. Not empty, just respectful. Like a library you're scared to sneeze in. As you walk inland, bird song flutters through the air like plucked lyre strings. You spot a silver arrow lodged in an olive trunk. Then another. Then a full deer-shaped outline of arrows. You step around it. In a clearing, a golden glow pulses like a heartbeat. And there stands Apollo, tall, blonde, draped in white, skin like someone turned sunlight into skin. He plays a lyre, effortlessly coaxing harmonies that seem to pluck at your memory more than your ears. Beside him, a shadow. Artemis, cool eyes, silver robes, bow across her back. She watches you like your prey she's not quite bored enough to chase yet. "Welcome to our birthplace," Apollo says, not stopping his playing. "Do you like music?" You nod. Words would be dumb here. "You're lucky," Artemis says. "He hasn't turned anyone into a dolphin all week." You stammer something about being very pro-dolphin, and she actually cracks a smile. Just barely. The twins begin to walk, and you follow them through groves and over crumbled stone altars. Apollo tells stories, some beautiful, some terrifying. How he flayed a satyr in a music contest. How he gave Cassandra the gift of prophecy and the curse of disbelief. Historians still argue whether Apollo's artistic temperament makes him a tragic genius or just the universe's most high-maintenance theater kid. Meanwhile, Artemis speaks in short, clipped phrases. She tells you how she asked Zeus for eternal virginity, how she runs with wolves, how she once transformed a man into a stag for watching her bathe, and then set his own dogs on him. "Boundaries," she says, shrugging. You ask if they ever fight. "Every day," they say in unison. But there's love between them too, a cosmic balance, sun and moon, aim and melody, warmth and caution. Apollo leads you to a temple where oracles once danced themselves into trances, inhaling vapors from deep cracks in the earth. The air here still hums with memory. He whispers, "Ask your question." You pause. So many options. Your path, your purpose, whether your dentist secretly judges you. You ask, why do gods need stories? Apollo stops playing. Artemis looks at you sharply. Then, softly, he answers, because stories are how we remember ourselves. Even you? You ask. Especially us, she replies. Without your retellings, we're just very complicated metaphors. You're quiet for a while. The wind rustles the olive trees. Apollo plucks a final chord. We're not real without you. You thank them. And Artemis, unexpectedly, hands you an arrow. For luck, she says. Or precision. They're basically the same. The captain calls from the ship. You turn to leave. Apollo winks. Don't let the next one sing you to death. You blink. The next what? But they've already vanished. One into shadow, one into light. You walk back, arrow in hand, your reflection in the sea a little straighter now. You're back aboard the ship, the sea's gentle rocking lulling your thoughts toward something quieter, slower. The sun has climbed higher, dappling the deck with patches of warmth. You settle into a corner, arrow tucked safely beside you, and wonder what other stories might drift your way on this peculiar voyage. The captain leans in, voice a quiet murmur against the sea's hush. Next, we visit the city that never sleeps. Well, sort of. Athens, cradle of democracy and drama. Athens. You've heard the name countless times. Philosophers, battles, and poets. But tonight, it feels less like a history lesson and more like a personal invitation. Walking the ancient streets in your mind, you picture marble columns reaching skyward, market stalls fragrant with olives and honey, the chatter of citizens debating politics and philosophy. You almost hear Socrates' calm voice challenging his students to question everything, even their own thoughts. Historians still argue whether Socrates' trial was political maneuvering or a tragic misunderstanding of a man ahead of his time. You imagine sitting quietly in the agora, watching this wise troublemaker stir the pot with nothing but questions and an unsettling calm. Nearby, you picture the Parthenon rising majestically, a temple dedicated to Athena, goddess of wisdom and war. She wasn't just a fierce protector. She embodied strategy and craft, much more than just battle fury. You recall a quirky tidbit. The ancient Athenians once held a festival where people dressed as owls, Athena's sacred bird, and danced through the streets to honor wisdom. The idea of a citywide owl party makes you grin softly. But Athens wasn't all philosophy and festivals. The city grappled with power struggles, plague, and the occasional scandalous love story whispered in shadowy corners. Remember the tale of Aspasia, an influential woman who shaped Pericles' ideas, yet lived in a time when women's voices were often hushed? Her story is a reminder that history has its hidden threads, often overlooked. As you wander through these ancient alleys in your mind, you feel the pulse of a city that thrived on ideas, on debate, and on the quiet power of thought. The captain's voice pulls you gently back. Ready for a night under Athenian stars? You nod, a smile tugging at your lips. Athens, with all its wisdom and wonder, seems like the perfect place to drift deeper into this journey. You follow a winding corridor of carved cloudstone, soft beneath your feet like old memory, until the hallway opens into something unexpected. It's a room, but not like any divine chamber you've seen before. There are scrolls stuffed into vases, sandals hanging from chandeliers, and a harp gently vibrating on its own in the corner. The walls are lined with cubbies, each labeled in Hermes's scratchy handwriting. Lost, maybe lost, and probably a mistake. A golden bell dings cheerfully above the door behind you, and from somewhere behind a curtain of fluttering paper, a voice calls out, "Be right with you. Don't trip over the soul jars." You look down. There are jars, dozens of them, all politely labeled, returned by mistake, awaiting purpose, dreams unclaimed. They hum softly, like sleeping bees. The curtain parts, and Hermes steps into view, brushing parchment from his tunic and holding a half-eaten fig. Oh, a visitor, or a misdelivery. He squints at you, then grins. Either way, welcome to the Department of Divine Deliveries and Misdeliveries, or, as I like to call it, the lost and found of fate. He gestures for you to follow him through the organized chaos. Stacks of celestial mail rise beside golden helmets. There's a basket labeled "Oaths Broken on Thursdays," and a shelf devoted to nothing but mysterious single earrings left behind in temples. Hermes weaves through the clutter with the ease of a dancer, his winged sandals barely skimming the ground, his laughter like wind through laurel branches. "You wouldn't believe the things gods misplace," he says. "Zeus once lost an entire prophecy, misfiled it under snacks, caused 2 wars and a minor rainstorm." He stops to point at a small harp hanging from the ceiling by a ribbon. "That's Orpheus's. He kept dropping it every time Eurydice showed up in his mind. Poor thing. I offered to tie it to his belt, but, well, romance." You nod. There's a softness here you hadn't expected. Not mockery, but memory. Every object holds a story, forgotten, dropped, delayed, or rerouted. Hermes picks up a sealed scroll, frowns at it. This was meant for Aphrodite, ended up with Ares, caused a whole scandal. She still doesn't know, so shh. He winks, tucks it into a drawer labeled Oops, and continues on. There's no rush here, only a sense of things still gently unfolding. In a quiet alcove, you find a collection of feathers, each a different color, each glowing faintly. Hermes watches you curiously. Those are intentions, he explains. People send them into the world, whispers, wishes, sighs in the dark. Some make it. Some get rerouted here. You reach out and touch one. It shivers like a leaf kissed by wind. Sometimes, Hermes adds, voice softer now, a wish just needs a little more time. You come to a small desk where the god has been sketching maps on napkins. Some show constellations bending into new shapes. Others are mazes that loop into themselves endlessly, with arrows that read, "Try again and not quite yet." Hermes shrugs. Destiny's a suggestion, he says, not a rule. From a drawer beneath the desk, he pulls out a velvet pouch. It jingles faintly as he pours the contents into your hand. Keys. Tiny, mismatched, beautiful keys. To doors that no longer exist, he says, and some that haven't opened yet. Keep one. You'll know when to use it. You choose one shaped like a crescent moon. It's warm, even in your palm. Hermes tilts his head. Most people think I'm the god of thieves and travel, he says. But mostly, I carry things. Messages, dreams, mistakes. The things people leave behind, or never quite reach. He leads you toward the back of the room, where a glass door opens into soft twilight. You glimpse a trail of stars stretching into the hills. Hermes smiles. Sometimes, the wrong path brings you exactly where you're meant to be. He presses a folded piece of paper into your hand before you go. It reads, "Not all things are lost. Some are just waiting." The door clicks shut behind you with a sound like a sigh, and the breeze carries the scent of old fig trees and forgotten hopes. Quiet things, soft things, still waiting to be delivered. The path bends again, lazily, like it can't quite decide where to go next, and you follow it without question, lulled by the rhythm of your steps and the way the air seems heavier here, like it's thick with words left hanging. Ahead, there's a cave, not dark, not foreboding, but warm with soft moss at its mouth and lichen that glows faintly like a nightlight for forgotten stories. The kind of place where silence should live. But there is no silence here. A voice floats out of the cave, then again and again. It overlaps itself, repeats with minor variations, builds like a breeze that can't stop circling back. I never said I liked him. I said maybe liked him. No, I didn't say liked. I said admired. No, respected. You step closer. Inside the cave sits a woman, lounging, reclining, monologuing. Her gown is draped carelessly over a pile of velvet cushions. A comb lies forgotten in her lap. She's currently talking to a boulder. Or rather, the boulder is reflecting her back at her, phrase by phrase, slightly delayed. It's Echo. Yes, that Echo. You've found the muse of repetition in her natural habitat, and she's in the middle of an uninterrupted feedback loop with herself. And honestly, Narcissus? Overrated. Sure, he had cheekbones. But do cheekbones raise olives? Do cheekbones understand tax law? I didn't think so. You try not to laugh. She pauses. Her eyes flick toward you. Oh, she says brightly, standing up. A real person. How refreshing. The rock's a great listener, don't get me wrong, but it's so literal. She brushes the moss from her gown and offers you a seat on a small, cushioned stone. Don't mind the echoes, she says with a little wink. They have minds of their own. You sit, and instantly you're wrapped in sound. Soft phrases bounce gently around the cave like floating feathers. Some are hers. Some might be yours. Some, you realize, are everyone's. Fragments of conversations lost to time. You hear, "Did you mean it?" "Come back." "I never knew." "I always did." Echo watches you absorb them. Words don't disappear, she says. They find quiet corners and caves. She gestures to her ear. And me. She offers you a cup of something. It tastes like time and memory. Comforting. Unexpected. I used to just repeat what people said, she explains, rolling her eyes. Cursed and all that. But eventually, I figured out a trick. You lean in. I learned to twist the repetition, she says, to add a little flair, a question here, a sigh there. Suddenly I'm not echoing them. They're echoing me. She's proud of that. You can tell by the way her smile curls like mist above hot tea. I've got thoughts, you know, she says. You don't haunt a cave for 2,000 years without forming a few opinions. Like, everyone says Apollo is handsome, but honestly, he's too golden. It's exhausting. I prefer shadows. They're honest. Echo plucks a phrase out of the air like it's a flower and tucks it behind your ear. You didn't hear it clearly, but it felt like kindness. Outside, a breeze picks up. The moss sways in time with her voice. Some people think repetition is a curse, she murmurs, eyes half-lidded. But I think it's a comfort. If something's worth saying once, maybe it's worth saying forever. You nod slowly. Your own thoughts begin to echo, not with noise, but with gentleness. You are safe. You are held. You are not alone. Echo stretches, settling again into her velvet nest. Stay as long as you like, she says. The cave remembers everyone. And as you leave, you hear your own footfalls repeated back to you. Not exactly the same. A little softer. A little wiser. A quiet voice, very much like your own, drifts toward you with one final refrain. Come back when you forget who you are. We'll remind you. The night wraps around you like a soft, dark blanket as your imagined steps carry you away from the bustling agora of Athens and into the quieter, shadowed corners of ancient history. This time, the labyrinthine world of Roman roads and emperors. You find yourself wandering along the famed Via Appia, the Appian Way, a ribbon of stone stretching miles beneath a canopy of olive trees and whispers of the past. The road is smoother than you'd expect, laid with such care that some parts still survive today, testament to Roman engineering's quiet stubbornness. You might think Roman roads were just for legions and merchants, but they were much more. These roads were the arteries of an empire, pulsing with messages, soldiers, and the occasional runaway poet trying to escape a bad review. Historians still argue whether the road-building frenzy was driven more by military ambition or sheer civic pride. Either way, the roads connected not just cities but cultures, ideas, and stories. Nearby, you imagine a small roadside inn where weary travelers swap tales over watered-down wine. Here, you overhear whispers about Emperor Hadrian's Wall, an imposing frontier far to the north, a line drawn in the wilds of Britain to hold back the unknown. Hadrian wasn't just a builder of walls. He was a poet and philosopher-emperor, someone who preferred contemplation over conquest. There's a quirky note to him. He once penned love poetry to a young Greek boy named Antinous, a detail that invites historians to debate his private life with a blush. As you drift further, you glimpse Roman baths steamy with life, people chatting softly as they soak, discussing politics or the latest gladiator spectacle. The baths were more than hygiene. They were social hubs, therapy centers, and gossip hotbeds. Imagine the echoes of laughter, splashes, and whispered secrets beneath the marble domes. But not all was leisure. Rome's political scene was a slow-burning soap opera of power plays and assassination plots. Julius Caesar's march on Rome and his infamous Ides of March are legendary, yet historians still debate if he was a hero, tyrant, or something in between. You can almost hear the murmur of senators, the clink of wine glasses, and the cold steel of betrayal lurking in shadowed halls. History's layers fold over themselves like the folds of a toga, complex and fascinating. As the night deepens, you feel the steady pulse of Rome beneath your feet, a city of roads, walls, baths, and stories waiting to carry you gently to sleep. You awake, well, in your mind, of course, amidst the rolling green hills and misty forests of medieval Europe, where castles perch like sleepy giants over sleepy villages. The clatter of hooves on cobblestones mingles with the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, a soothing rhythm in this slow-moving world. Here, life feels both rigid and strangely simple. You trudge past timber-framed houses with thatched roofs, where smoke curls lazily from chimneys and the scent of freshly baked bread drifts through the air. Medieval life wasn't all knights and battles. Much of it was waiting for the harvest, for the church bells to ring, or for news that might never come. You imagine a day in the life of a peasant, waking before dawn, toiling in fields, then gathering by the fire to share stories, the flickering flames casting shadows on tired faces. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were better off than commonly portrayed, or if romanticizing their hard lives does them a disservice. Either way, their resilience shines through the dusty pages of history. Speaking of dusty pages, did you know that in some medieval villages, people used communal baths, sometimes not just for hygiene, but as social events? Picture a steamy wooden tub surrounded by gossiping neighbors. It's oddly cozy. And then there's the quirky detail. To keep rats away, some peasants kept cats close by, a practice that would eventually weave into the folklore of witches and black magic. Not that you should worry about that tonight. You hear the distant toll of a church bell, marking time in this slow world. Life was often ruled by religion and seasons, a comforting but sometimes stifling rhythm. Castles loom, not just as military forts, but as centers of administration and culture, places where lords hosted feasts and minstrels sang songs that would echo through the halls for centuries. One famous figure floats into your thoughts: Eleanor of Aquitaine, a queen who was more than just a royal figurehead. She was a shrewd political player, a patron of the arts, and a woman who defied many expectations of her time. Medieval history is often painted in broad strokes of battles and knights, but it's the quiet moments, the daily grind, the festivals, the whispered secrets that truly breathe life into this era. You settle deeper into the slow cadence of this world, where time moves gently and every shadow has a story. The dawn finds you in the dusty, sun-baked streets of a bustling medieval marketplace somewhere in the Middle East, where spices scent the air and vibrant textiles flutter like flags above your head. You stroll past stalls laden with figs, silk, and strange trinkets, the murmur of bartering voices mixing with the occasional bray of a donkey. This world is a crossroads of cultures and ideas, a place where scholars, traders, and travelers meet and exchange more than just goods. You might not know it, but the medieval Islamic world was a hub of scientific innovation and learning, home to libraries that preserved the wisdom of ancient Greece and Rome while pushing the boundaries of medicine, astronomy, and mathematics. Historians still debate the extent of the influence of this golden age on Europe's Renaissance, but there's no denying the ripple effect of knowledge flowing along trade routes like the Silk Road. Here's a quirky fact. Medieval doctors used to prescribe music therapy, soft melodies to soothe the sick. Imagine a lute playing gently in a whitewashed clinic. As you wander, you catch sight of a scholar, perhaps Al-Razi or Ibn Sina, scribbling notes on medicinal herbs, blending the empirical with the mystical. Their works would shape medicine for centuries, long after their names faded from common memory. Nearby, children play games much like yours, their laughter an unchanging human constant across the ages. You might even catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure from the famous 1001 Nights, spinning tales that captivate listeners into the night. Trade is booming here, but not without risk. Caravans must navigate deserts, mountains, and bandits. You can almost feel the weight of spices and silks balanced on camels' backs, the slow rhythm of travel both thrilling and exhausting. Life in these cities is a blend of the mystical and the practical, where minarets rise alongside bustling markets, and every alleyway hides a story waiting to unfold. As the call to prayer echoes softly, you find yourself lulled by the gentle pulse of a civilization that thrived on curiosity and connection, a soothing rhythm for your wandering mind. You drift into the dense, shadowy forests of northern Europe, where towering pines whisper ancient secrets and the cool, damp earth cushions your footsteps. It's the Viking Age, a time when fearless explorers and traders from Scandinavia set out into unknown waters, driven by adventure, trade, and sometimes a little mischief. Picture yourself aboard a longship, the salty sea breeze ruffling your hair as the rhythmic splash of oars keeps time with your heartbeat. Vikings weren't just raiders. They were skilled sailors, traders, and settlers, connecting distant lands from North America to Byzantium. Historians still argue whether the Viking raids were primarily driven by necessity or pure opportunism. But either way, their impact shaped the medieval world in profound ways. Here's a fun tidbit. Vikings used a special kind of sunstone crystal to navigate even on cloudy days, a clever trick that's still a bit mysterious today. Imagine trying to find your way home with just a crystal and the sky. Life in Viking society was surprisingly complex, with laws, assemblies called things, and a strong sense of community. Women held more rights than many contemporaries elsewhere, managing homes and even going to war. You might recognize some familiar names: Leif Erikson, the adventurous soul who reached North America centuries before Columbus, or Ragnar Lothbrok, whose legendary exploits blur the lines between history and myth. Back on land, villages buzz with the clang of smiths and the chatter of storytellers, spinning sagas by firelight. These stories weren't just entertainment, they were a way to remember and teach, weaving history and values into tales that drift through the night. Oddly enough, Vikings also had a taste for fermented shark and sour milk, foods that might make your taste buds recoil, but which kept them fueled on long voyages. As the longship sails into the fading light, you feel the steady pulse of a culture that balanced brutality with honor, adventure with home, and myth with reality. You find yourself walking through the echoing marble halls of ancient Rome, where senators in togas debate quietly beneath soaring arches, and the scent of fresh bread mingles with the dust of countless footsteps. The empire stretches across continents, a colossal force built on engineering marvels, political intrigue, and the ever-shifting dance of power. You probably won't survive the brutal gladiatorial games, but you can appreciate the spectacle as a complex form of public entertainment and social control, drawing the crowd's roar like waves washing over the Colosseum's stone tiers. Historians still argue whether the Republic's fall was inevitable or just bad luck piled on bad leadership. Either way, the story of Julius Caesar, Cicero, and Augustus shapes much of Western political thought. Here's a quirky fact. Roman concrete, a mysterious blend of volcanic ash and lime, was so durable that many ancient structures still stand today, far outlasting modern concrete. Imagine pouring a sidewalk that lasts 2 millennia. Daily life involved more than just politics and warfare. You might wander through a bustling forum filled with merchants hawking olives and wine, or stop at a public bath where Romans relaxed, gossiping amid steamy pools and massages. Roman roads, stretching like arteries across the empire, connected cities and facilitated everything from troop movements to trade, some still in use today, centuries later. In quieter corners, slaves labored tirelessly, while wealthy patricians enjoyed lavish villas decorated with intricate mosaics and fountains that whispered soothing water sounds, a luxury you could almost drift to sleep beside. As night falls, the city softens into shadows and torchlight, and you sense the pulse of a civilization both brilliant and brutal, whose legacy echoes in the marble and myths it left behind. You step gently into the serene world of ancient Egypt, where the golden sands stretch endlessly beneath a sun that seems to never tire. The Nile flows like a shimmering ribbon, nourishing the land and shaping the rhythm of life for thousands of years. Imagine yourself on a quiet evening by the riverbank, the soft croak of frogs mingling with distant chants from temples dedicated to gods both kind and fierce. Egyptians believed their souls journeyed through an elaborate afterlife, guided by spells from the Book of the Dead, a bedtime story with serious stakes. Historians still argue whether the Great Pyramid was built mainly by slaves or skilled laborers, but either way, the precision and scale leave you in awe, especially as the sun sets, casting long shadows on the limestone blocks. Here's a curious tidbit. Egyptians used a concoction of crocodile dung and honey as sunscreen and antiseptic. Yes, you heard that right. Somehow, it worked, though you might want to skip that beauty routine tonight. Life was deeply intertwined with religion and the cycles of nature. Farmers depended on the predictable flooding of the Nile, while artisans crafted jewelry that sparkled like the stars in the desert sky. Pharaohs were both rulers and gods, with elaborate burial rituals designed to ensure their eternal rest and return. You can almost feel the cool, silent air of tombs filled with treasures, waiting to be discovered centuries later. In marketplaces, the smell of fresh bread and spices blends with the chatter of traders and the laughter of children. The pace here is slow but purposeful, like the gentle ebb of the river itself. As the stars blanket the sky, you settle into this timeless world, feeling the calm flow of history washing over you like the Nile's endless current.